Team, the fight against coronavirus continues. We have updates from the various top leaders involved in this, President Trump, his task force, and everybody else that's trying to make sure that we save as many lives as possible and get on the other side of this coronavirus curve. I'll break it all down for you, plus the role of China in all this, coming up on the Buck Sexton Show. Welcome, everyone, to the Buck Sexton Show. Thank you for joining me here. I am still in quarantine, week 2 of what's going to be at least now, I guess, 6 weeks of quarantine. This is the circumstance that we find ourselves in New York City. I know it's different in different places all across the country, but this is going to be our reality for the foreseeable. Producer Mark and I are talking about how we thought this might be a pretty short-term, a pretty temporary circumstance doing this show in our remote locations, but I think the remote locations are now the official freedom huts for the foreseeable. We have some updates for you on where we stand now against this, a whole bunch of stories I want to bring to your attention today. So lots to do, lots to talk about, as is always the case. Let's get first the president speaking about what the priority is here. There's been a redoubling of the mission. I think there's greater clarity now than there had been before from the administration about how they want to proceed in terms of the timeline and the duration of some of these restrictions. Here's what the president had to say. Play 9.
It's so bad for the economy, but the economy is number 2 on my list. First, I want to save a lot of lives. We're going to get the economy back. I think the economy is going to come back very fast. Steve's just asking about the economy. What's it like? We basically shut down our country. And we did that in order to keep people separated, keep people apart. They're not working in offices. They're not in airplanes together. You know, we really shut it down. And, 151 other countries are pretty much shut down. But here we had the greatest economy in the world. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had to go from doing a great job for 3 years to shutting it down. But you know what? We're going to build it up, and we're going to build it up rapidly. And I think in the end, we'll be stronger for it. We learned a lot.
The president's saying, look, this is the way it's going to be. This is now the mission. It is to do the absolute maximum for virus suppression measures now, and then bringing back the economy, which everyone now understands has been effectively frozen in place. Well, not even really frozen in place, because it is worse. It is worse than it was before. The markets have gotten crushed. There's a lot of lost jobs. There's a lot of lost businesses. And as I walk around the city, I suppose one of the problems I've had with my perception of this, or an issue that I have to gauge, is I see the shuttered stores. I see the individuals who are trying to scratch out a living in the very, very few now restaurants that remain open here in the center of New York City. And I feel terribly for them. And I've got to think that there's a way to balance this out, perhaps take other precautions or other measures. There must be something else that we can do other than just this, right? And no, it turns out that this is the only thing that we really can do under the circumstances. This is the only thing that the government now will, at least for the next month, have as the strategy. I have been concerned about this. As you know, I'm very worried, especially about the impact on places where they don't have a lot of COVID-19, and then it could the economic devastation might last for a very, very long time. And people who are trying to be adults and talk in good faith understand that there are some risks that society accepts, when even risk to life, as just a fact of its day-to-day functioning. But this virus and the threat that it poses has clearly added and created an additional degree of risk, even beyond that which we would tolerate for, say, other major illnesses and other issues that come up that pose threat to lives and to, well, livelihoods as well. So now this is where we are. This is the mission. We're all supposed to do everything we can. This is a national effort, top down, to do whatever's in our power to make sure that this virus is the absolute minimum of spread, given where it already is, and therefore also an absolute minimum of casualties. And I think that the mood of the nation has shifted, or at least the mood, I could say the mood of the government, and I think with it much of the nation, although I can't speak for other parts of the country, but certainly because New York is in a particularly bad spot right now. It's in the worst spot of any place in the United States when it comes to this. By far, it's not. I think we have 10x the number of established cases that Los Angeles does, for example. But the administration, I mean, there's no question that the administration has shifted from a week or two ago sounding like, look, we might have to go back to work. There's going to be some risks, to now saying, no, all out against the virus, everything to do, everything we can do, we must in the suppression of this virus. And I think we're also at a point where we have to take it as, well, you don't have to take it on faith, but we have to have a belief that the federal government will be able to bring back, the federal government will be able to resurrect the economy in a few months' time when it starts to allow for more working and, additional economic activity. I think it's a pretty big risk that we are running, and I've been saying that all along. But I also understand now that people say, well, that's the choice that we've made as a society now. The risk is something we're just going to accept. All right. So we're going to add trillions of dollars to the debt. We're going to have unemployment that reaches close to 40, 50 million. We're going to send a lot of checks from the Treasury, which hopefully will have at least very important short-term benefits for everyone. And that's where we're going. That's what we're going to do. And we hope that there's no inflation. We hope that there's no economic devastation that results from this. But I also think that the government's attitude now is we can handle whatever the economic situation is. I'm not saying that they're right or not. I don't know. I'm at the hope and pray phase for the government. The same government officials and agencies, and from the federal all the way down to the local level, those same individuals who are incapable or unable to prepare adequately for what we're seeing here. Those same people are now telling us, don't worry, we're going to take this unprecedented and major economic step of shutting down an economy, and we'll just bring it all back. And look, maybe they're right, and then it's clearly the right move. I've been worried that this will trigger a depression, and now I'm seeing that there seems to be very little concern over that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading the wrong newspapers, I don't read newspapers, but reading the wrong websites and news organizations and opinion columns and seeing other people who think a lot about these issues for a living. But we've decided that we're not worried about the economy right now. We're just going to do everything we can to deal with this virus. And I do wonder if down the line there'll be more of a movement to have more extreme precautions in place during, and I'm not comparing this to flu. This is worse than flu, and I've known that for a while. It's a lot worse than the flu. But I wonder if when we get past this, which will be certainly a happy day, if we will reach a phase where everyone realizes, or everyone's told, that they're now expected to wear gloves and face masks when they go in the office for normal flu, for which we lose, as you know, the numbers now are constantly talked about, anywhere from 20 to 80,000 people a year. And I wonder also how much every life is worth any amount of risk and worth any amount of systemic economic pressure. I wonder where else that will apply, because I think that's been the change in mentality that has occurred. And in large part, it's because of the people that are around the president, in the case that he has made to people about what needs to be done here. So that's the latest for me, is that the president, or the most important thing here, I think, is that the president is recalibrating the way forward. And this is in response to what he said on Sunday. I mean, here he is saying that, we're going to win. It's going to be great. But also, there is no other option here. Play clip 10.
We have no other choice. Every one of us has a role to play in winning this war. Every citizen, family, and business can make the difference in stopping the virus. This is our shared patriotic duty. Challenging times are ahead for the next 30 days, and this is a very vital 30 days. We're sort of putting it all on the line. This 30 days, so important because we have to get back. But the more we dedicate ourselves today, the more quickly we will emerge on the other side of the crisis. And that's the time we're waiting for. The more we commit ourselves now, the sooner we can win the fight and return to our lives. And they will be great lives, maybe better than ever.
There we go. That's what the president's saying. We have no other choice. We have to do everything we can here to move forward against the virus in this way. And we are going to see, however, some, under any other circumstances, which you would have to consider to be very concerning circumstances. We are going to see situations in which there are, for example, state and local authorities that are really just deciding that there are no constitutional protections. This is already happening. I mean, you had de Blasio yesterday say that he might shut down a house of worship permanently. That's not something you would usually hear from the mayor of a large city. You have mandates to stay at home. I saw that in D.C. they're saying that maybe you will be subjected to 90 days in 90 days in prison if you don't confine yourself to home. So on the one hand, you have cities that are releasing prisoners, and I've even seen some reports now that it's not just elderly prisoners who pose no threat to the public, but they're releasing prisoners much more broadly than that. Much more dangerous prisoners are actually being caught up in these released in these release programs. So you have cities that are going to start having to enforce this. And right now, maybe it doesn't seem like it is all that problematic from a liberty perspective. Right now, it's an issue that we can philosophically understand, perhaps, but because we're staying home. Are we going to be staying home and relatively quiet in mid-April, late April? If this is as bad as the numbers that they're telling us, I can't imagine that they're really going to have much of a relaxation of this in May, because the way now the discussion has been set up, anybody who says we need, even if there's elevated risk, which elevated risk means that there will be more people who could conceivably catch this disease and could die from it, anybody who's willing to say at any point, yes, let's start to go back to normal. If there's a jump in cases, Dr. Fauci talked about the rebound, that person will have people, that leader, that official, whoever it is, will have people screaming that they've got blood on their hands. They've got blood on their hands. That's what we'll be hearing all the time. And that means that who's really going to want to take that upon themselves? Right now, no one wants to be the one who has to say. I mean, if you even bring up the economy right now, I mean, I'm telling you this, many of you that I'm speaking to on this show, I'm saying, I have concerns about the economy. The feeling in New York right now is if you even say, hey, are we sure that we can handle this economically, that maybe there's not some other concern that we should work into this whole process of how you are like Adolf Hitler brought back to life. You're the worst person ever. If you even bring up the economy, you're a bad person. That's the attitude here in New York City. I'm sure that's true in other places as well, even though the people that are being the hardest hit by this right now are, in fact, people who are working people. I mean, when I say hardest hit by this, I mean on the economic side, obviously not including those who are infected with the virus. They're working people. They're people who are losing their businesses. And there's just all of this lost productivity. I mean, what happens if you're somebody who is in the midst of trying to finalize a major transaction for your business, and now there's really no business being done? You're finished, right? Your life's work may go up in smoke, but we're being told that that's just the cost that we are all going to bear now for maximum measures against the virus. And I understand. All you have to do is take a look at some of the information, some of the photos, and just anecdotal conversations with doctors. I mean, I've had conversations with doctors in some of the hospitals here, and they will tell you that this is much worse, meaning that the virus is much worse than we were led to believe even in a couple of weeks ago. Every day now, the more we know about this, the more we realize it is very rapidly spread. It is incredibly dangerous to older people, but it is a dangerous adversary even to the immune system of relatively healthy people. It can be. If it goes badly, it goes badly very quickly. So this is where we are. The discussion about the Constitution, the discussion about individual rights, that right now is being pushed aside. And if you even bring up any of the Bill of Rights, if you even bring up any of the freedoms that we're supposed to have under the Constitution, you're essentially shouted down for being a murderer. So we have somehow transitioned in much of the country. I know some of you don't yet feel it as strongly, but give it time. I mean, you better be even in a state like that is generally a little more of a conservative-leaning state. You're going to have a lot of policies, if you don't already, that just are you do what the government says. You're just going to do what the government says. There's no, you do not get a say. There is no vote. I understand. I understand why we're being told this is necessary, and I know that the horrible disease. We all understand how painful it is for anybody who gets this and people who are losing loved ones to this. But I do think that there must be at least room for a discussion, a reminder, if you will, that we're effectively letting the government do whatever it wants at this point, and that right now may feel like a necessity, but and maybe it is a necessity, and you could discuss this and argue about this, but it's also a precedent. And how long does the government get to do this? Where else does the government get to do this? Remember that there are other issues that people view as saving lives, and if you oppose them, you're opposed to saving lives. That's the way the left frames a lot of things. Do you think that they're going to stop now that we've all this one time succumbed to being told you're just going to do this because the government says so? You think this is going to be the one and only time? I doubt it. With all the talk of listening to the experts, I have to tell you that I've been paying pretty close attention to the experts as much as I can find them all along here. And they've been wrong. Mostly I've been focused on the leadership that's been wrong. And there have been people telling you, go out, live your life. Don't worry about it. It's fine. But now we see that even some of the medical advice in the medical community, I shouldn't say the advice so much as the assessments, but coronavirus may be contagious longer than thought, even after the cessation of symptoms. It might be transmittable. It seems to be much more transmittable, 3 times as easily transmitted as the flu, which we weren't really told initially. And certainly there was no, they weren't clear on that point. And it is dangerous even to people outside of the age, and not as dangerous, but it's dangerous to people even outside of elevated risk of age and other health issues. So they're still learning a lot about this as we're making these massive decisions about what to do with the country.
Anyone who says this situation is a New York City only situation is in a state of denial. You see this virus move across the state. You see the virus move across this nation. There is no American who is immune to this virus. I don't care if you live in Kansas. I don't care if you live in Texas. There is no American that is immune. What is happening to New York is not an anomaly. There's nothing about it, a New Yorker's immune system that is any different than any other American's immune system. So in many ways, New York is just a canary in the coal mine. What you see us going through here, you will see happening all across this country.
So here we have the governor of New York saying that this is going to happen everywhere. Now, some of what he says, or I think some of what his intent is true, and that is that there is no difference, obviously, in the immune system of somebody from New York versus somebody from Texas or Utah or Montana or you name it, right? We're all the same human beings. We're all the same immune system. Okay, fine, but that's an obvious point, right? We don't really need to be told that. We don't need that to be said. So let's get to what is the dispute about then, because I know some of you listen to this, and I try to be as aware of this as possible as I'm talking to you, because New York is different from other places around the country. New York is a different circumstance than what you're dealing with really everywhere else, although it is getting pretty bad. And there was that one really horrible outbreak in Washington State early on, and it's getting really bad in Florida, in New Orleans. Look, it's heartbreaking everywhere that this thing is getting bad. I mean, the realities here of what this disease does to people, how quickly they're gone. I mean, it's you read about this enough, and I'll be honest with you, it's tough to stave off a little bit of a feeling of just, I guess you'd have to say, just depression from having to read about this all day and be stuck inside. So you all are a big help in that regard. It's really tough to be locked away here and not really have any contact with human beings. And yet I get to speak to you all across the country. And that's one thing that really makes me feel connected and keeps me going. Because otherwise it's just all coronavirus in the news all day long. And this is my job. This is my livelihood. This is what I do. I talk about what's going on. I talk about the news. So Cuomo's point here that we're all the same is not an easy one for people to miss, right? I mean, we're aware of that. But, I mean, our immune systems are all the same. We get that. But, okay, now what really is he saying, or where is the disagreement? The disagreement is, should all these other states find themselves in the same circumstance, or should they be taking really the same precautions as New York City? Or are states allowed to make determinations for what level of risk? Remember, level of risk is what we're talking about with these different infections, or with the possibility of infection. And level of risk is also going to be different for different places. Risk, though, does translate at some number when you look at the aggregates into infection, and infection will translate into some number of people who die from this. But do states get to, and I feel like that's almost a controversial thing to say these days. We're talking about risk mitigation for a virus. I mean, Anthony Fauci said that we might have a rebound if we try to relax some of these at some point in the future. So that clearly means that we're going to make a determination. You have to make a determination one day that there will be elevated risk, that there will be an elevation of the possibility of people getting this in order to achieve greater normalcy, economic activity, and freedom of movement for all the rest of us, right? That is the discussion that will be happening, but it's not happening right now. Right now, it's whatever the state wants, whatever the government is telling us. And so I just ask, why is it that the states that don't have the same degree of cases should take the same approach as, say, New York, where population density matters? I mean, I happen to live in one of the most densely populated areas of all of the country, and one of the more densely populated parts of the entire world. On the way to work, I'm on the subway. I'm packed with people, shoulder to shoulder, all over, and touching things that hundreds and hundreds of people have touched the same day before me, with the rails and the things that you hold. I don't know. What do you call the thing, Producer Mark, that hangs down from the roof of the subway car?
A pole?
No, not the pole. You know, the little hand thing.
I don't know, the grabber?
Yeah, the thing you grab.
Yeah.
All right, you don't have to, the grabby thing.
Thingy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that is. So, but I'm touching all these things, and so there's a greater risk of virus for me than, say, a lot of you who live in a house, get in a car, drive to your work. Maybe your work has 4 or 5 employees there, and you all have separate spaces where you're working, and you go home to your family, and that's it. I'm at much greater day-to-day risk because of where I am, and so wouldn't it be sensible for different states, or at least different parts of states, to be able to make determinations for themselves about what level of risk they're willing to tolerate here? But now, see, what happens is the federal government and other people that are trying to do maximum virus suppression would turn around and say, okay, well, if you do that, though, if you don't have the same social distancing restrictions, business shutdowns, all these things that we know now have become defining characteristics of our day-to-day lives. If we don't do that, you're just going to become the next hotspot, and then you're going to be a drain on our resources, and we're already dealing with this. And so there really is going to be a lot of pressure not to allow for states to make those determinations from the federal government. And that just means that you're looking at, this is a long and somewhat roundabout way of saying you're looking at what is effectively going to turn into a one-size-fits-all policy very soon of businesses. I mean, I know some states are a little bit lagging behind on this, but you're going to be told businesses have to all be shut down. Everybody has to shelter at home, self-quarantine, stay in place. It doesn't really matter where you are in the country. That's what's probably going to happen. That's where the country, I think, is trending right now. It's amazing what a shift there's been, and I suppose it's because of the numbers we've seen. Look, the numbers are higher than I had thought they would be based on everything that I was reading. Not right now, but the assessed numbers that it could be 100 to 200,000 in this country, and the president saying less than 100,000 dead would be relatively successful in his response. Again, that's what he's saying. And I don't need to be yelled at. You don't care about 80,000. No, we all care about it. We're just trying to do the best we can here. We're hit with a terrible circumstance that nobody really has the answers to. So is New York the harbinger of things to come for the rest of the country, or is New York the worst hit place and other parts around the country will be in a much better position to treat this and to help people get better? Here's Mayor de Blasio, for example, here talking about the amount of assistance that the federal government has been providing them. Play 16.
My message to the president is thank you, and we need more help. And that's not because any of us likes to have to say that, but because it's true. The toughest weeks are ahead. We are bracing ourselves for something we've never seen before in any of our lives. And the federal government, in many ways, is the only force that can help us to reach the level of preparation we need to save every life we can save. So I'm going to keep calling the president. I'm going to keep appealing to him to get us all the help we need for these really tough weeks. And then again, we will turn around and help everyone else in this country right after.
I wish that de Blasio was a little bit more confidence-inspiring than he is, but this is the mayor we've got here. So those of you who live in other parts of the country, be thankful. It's very unlikely. There's some places where the mayor's as bad. Very unlikely your mayor is as bad as ours. But this is now, we are in the fight for the next few weeks. That's where this is going to be. There's not going to be any other discussion really at a national policy level. We are just going to be in the midst of an all-out effort to suppress this virus, to help medical personnel, to build the facilities and the equipment necessary, and everything else has been put on hold. So that is where we are, my friends, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. And I can certainly sign on for the maximum value here of protecting life. I still have my concerns that we're pushing aside the economic destruction and lives ruined and lives lost if we head into a depression. But the government's saying that's not going to happen, and who knows? Who knows at this point? No one's ever seen anything like this before. So anyone who speaks with certainty on these matters, I think, is fooling themselves as much as they're trying to fool anybody else.
The president said when he announced that those ships would be put into action against the COVID-19 epidemic, he said one of those ships would be operational in New York Harbor by next week. That's nonsense. It will not be there next week.
It is. She was wrong. That's Rachel Maddow, the, $15 or $20 million a year main news anchor over at MSNBC. Why take that position, though? Why view the president trying to tell people that he's doing what he can to get additional resources to New York? Why is he saying this if he's not really making the effort to do it, right? Start with that. And why would Rachel Maddow then take it as an opportunity to say, oh, but it's not happening, and to snark about this? And she's wrong. It's here. The ship is here. I actually saw it sailing into the port, or Pier 90, rather, the pier here in Manhattan. I saw it as it was coming past my apartment. It was a pretty amazing sight, actually. It was an interesting thing to see. You don't always see Now, it's also a moment of reckoning that we have a naval hospital ship that has had to arrive here in the largest city in America to try to help with hospital overflow because of what's going on. I mean, I have no illusions at all about what really this symbolizes. But look, anytime the United States Navy shows up somewhere, I feel a little bit better. I feel a little better than I did before they got there. And that's certainly the case here. But the press continues to be so reckless about all of this. The press continues to be wrong and just deeply and utterly irresponsible in the way that they approach coverage of this administration. And, you know, I can understand why there's a need right now. There's a sense that we should all be nicer to each other. And I've been trying to be less partisan. I've been trying to be a little bit less of a, what's the word? Go less hard, less intense on my ideological opponents as a general matter, because I do think that we are united. Everyone is inherently united in their humanity and the desire to make things better when it comes to the situation of America right now. We want to beat this virus. We want to find a way to get past this virus. That said, there's not really the same willingness from Democrats who are covering this administration to stop with the nonsense games. They're still trying to score points for their audiences against this guy, and I find that against the president, I find that really unseemly. And you know, these press conferences, we'll talk more about what they've been doing and what some of the media responses to them have been. These press conferences, I think, have been a source of real information and some degree of emotional support for the country. I mean, here you have the president of the United States who's saying, look, we're doing all these things. Here are all the things that we're trying to do to deal with this. And you have people that are trying to play gotcha games about, look, a lot of people, I haven't been right on every step of this, and I admit it. I've before some others thought that this was a very serious issue, but I wish I had recognized the seriousness of it, 2 months ago. The leadership has been overwhelmingly wrong on this, really at all levels and in both parties. This is worse than they told us it would be even 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I think we come to grips with, I would argue even a week ago. I mean, in the last week, what we've seen is, this is really, now that we are up close and personal with this virus in New York City, now that there's real reports coming in, this is definitely not the flu. It's much, much worse than that. So people have been wrong, and I don't understand why, with the president trying to give information about what's happening now, what's going to be going on in the future, why anyone views it as particularly useful or helpful to take that opportunity to ask the president about strategy right now and about what we're doing and try to get him on some older, earlier thing that he did that he said that they didn't like. They are playing gotcha games. Here's the president in an exchange with Jim Acosta, who continues to be the fakest journalist in America. I don't know what else to say. I mean, even now, when there's real problems, there's real lives at risk, and we've got massive issues here. Here's what he says. Play clip 1.
Go ahead. Let's give it a shot.
Sir, what do you say to Americans who are upset with you over the way you downplayed this crisis over the last couple of months? We have it very much under control in this country. The coronavirus is very much under control in the USA. It's going to disappear. It's like a miracle. It will disappear. At March 4th, we have a very small number of people in this country infected. March 10th, we're prepared. We're doing a great job with it. It will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. What do you say to Americans who believe that you got this wrong?
And I do want them to stay calm. And we are doing a great job. If you look at those individual statements, they're all true. Stay calm. It will go away. You know it is going away, and it will go away. And we're going to have a great victory. And it's people like you and CNN that say things like that. It's why people just don't want to listen to CNN anymore. You could ask a normal question. The statements I made are, I want to keep the country calm. I don't want panic in the country. I could cause panic much better than even you. I could do much. I would make you look like a minor league player. But you know what? I don't want to do that. I want to have our country be calm and strong and fight and win, and it will go away. And instead of asking a nasty, snarky question like that, you should ask a real question.
Yes, correct. It would be better for all of us if they would ask real questions instead of the gotcha nonsense that we see from CNN as well as other news organizations.